Welcome to the Aligned Powerhouse, the podcast for executive women who are done leading from burnout and ready to rise from alignment. I'm your host, Dr. Brittany McGeehan, licensed psychologist, high performance and mindset coach, and guide for high-achieving women who are ready to lead, live, and love without abandoning themselves. Here, we unpack the nervous system truths, mindset shifts, and emotional patterns that drive your leadership so you can build power from the inside out. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome back to today's episode. Y'all, I'm so excited. We are bridging some of my absolute favorite things today in today's episode. So today we are going to talk about motherhood, high-performing mothers, and like what is actually going on here. So here's what I need you to know. Okay, if you are a high-performing mother who wants children who actually are honest with her and desire a relationship with her, and you want a home that feels calm instead of always feeling rushed and overwhelmed, if you want family camaraderie and closeness that lasts into adult child relationships, right? Meaning like you have a relationship with your grandchildren. There are still traditions that are being upheld while your children are in their 30s and 40s, right? If you want a child who feels safe enough to assert their boundaries and discover who they are, hopefully before they are an adult or they have mastered the process of that, and you still want deep connection without completely losing yourself in any of this, then today's episode is for you. Because I am going to hand you the number one thing that emotionally connected mothers are doing differently, especially when they are running empires behind the scenes, okay? I work with some of the most incredible women in this country in terms of they are sitting at the top of corporate companies, they are running Goliaths of businesses, and they are juggling real life tensions and relationships behind closed doors. And the one that usually brings people in the door, sometimes it's marriage, but guys, it's also their relationship with their children. Chances are, if you are listening to this show, you are a woman who has grown up in a home that had emotionally complicated, we will say, dynamics that have had an impact on you as an adult in some way, shape, or form. And if there is one thing that I know about mothers, if there is one thing that I know about you to be true, is that you want better for your kids. And here is the thing, guys, is that children do not stay close, like emotionally connected and close to mothers because that mother was perfect. They stay close because that mother felt emotionally safe and emotionally available, emotionally reachable, right? This episode is for every ambitious mother who is trying to build an extraordinary life without creating emotional distance from her children in the process. So per usual, pull out your journals, pull out your notes. You know that I'm going to hand you some takeaways. And for those of you who don't know, like this is like a personal episode, right? It's coming at a very timely manner. This is one that I've been wanting to share. And I will tell you, recently I was given feedback from one of my nearest and dearest friends, and she is a parenting expert. She's incredible. And she's kind of like me. She's no nonsense. And this is a friend who I reach out to when I need no nonsense feedback. So that's what I asked for, especially as, there have been so many gifts of the season that I am in. But most recently, I have been transitioning out of a season where kiddos are my primary priority. And it's not that they're no longer prioritized, right? I can feel a little bit of anxiety come online as I say that in a very public forum. But it is that now we are making a little bit more space for my business, my career, and the priorities they're shifting a little bit, and that requires intentionality, right? Because, and one thing that we'll hit on in this episode is that Children do not need tons and tons and tons of time with their caregiver. They need intentional time. They need quality time. This is what fuels and builds healthy, secure attachment. And most recently, as my business has it has been expanding rapidly this year. I'm really having to come back and look at some of my boundaries, making sure that I am living in alignment with the things, one, that I say I'm living in, but also two, in a way that fits within our family team structure. We say Team McGeehan all the time, right? And honestly, it will only continue to get more complicated as more dynamics enter the picture, as the business continues to grow. And so I reached out to this friend, just sort of checking in of like, hey, I want to run these things by you. What do you hear? And the audacity of this beautiful, wonderful friend to actually hand me feedback and be like, watch this, watch this, watch this. I was like, oh, that's not actually what I wanted. Oh my gosh. And thank goodness we have a very sturdy friendship and relationship. And don't we all need more people like this in our lives? But she pushed back in a very healthy and effective way that brought me back to center, right? So that's kind of what's been happening in the background. And then I sit down to do all of my recordings today and I was like, all right, well, let's get into it because someone else needs to hear this too, right? And this is what my friend brought me back to, because I will be so honest with you guys. Like, when she gave me feedback and was like, watch your boundaries, make sure you're not choosing your phone and your business over your children, which the other end of that was be more structured, right? Be more structured. When you're with your kids, be with your kids. When you're in your business, be in your business, but stop trying to do both. Stop trying to do it all. And I was like, excuse me, like, I am little Miss Queen of not doing it all. And she was like, are you? And it was a little bit of a reality check, right? And part of what we really came back to, because I didn't go into like a full shame spiral, but like Patricia, if you know, if you're a longtime listener, you know who Patricia is. She's my alter ego. She's one of them. And she came out and I was like, first of all, who said that you could say those things to me? Second of all, you're probably correct. And I should go and look at some of this. And really what we came back to is exactly what I'm talking about today, in terms of like, if I could hand you one thing in motherhood, one thing that is going to not only lighten the load for you, but it's also going to radically transform your relationship with your kids. It is this thing. So let's jump into it, right? Y'all know how this goes. First off, we got to talk about, how did we get here in the first place? So many high performing mothers accidentally feel emotionally unavailable because, and I will tell you, I have been in this industry for over a decade, and I have done many variations of this work, meaning I have worked in community mental health, I've worked in family therapy, couples therapy, play therapy with kiddos. Like, I've seen the gamut, right, before I landed in my niche. And what I will say is that I've never sat across from a family member, I've never sat across from a mother who was not trying her absolute best, okay? I've never met anyone who said, this morning I want to be emotionally unavailable to my children and I want to radically disrupt our relationship. Like, that's just not what happens. But the other reality is that if you are here, like, you've gotten there somehow, right? So let's really talk about this. Now, let's talk about divided attention, which is exactly what my friend was really pushing me on. And it is something that for myself, I really struggle with. And I will tell you why is the exact device that you are listening to this on, right? We have the world. We have literal robots and computers at our fingertips in our pockets 24/7 that are available to us. It is egregious. It is so challenging. It is so hard on our nervous system, especially if you're like neurospicy. Oh my gosh, get out. And then you want to code switch, right? So you want to move from a day where you are running meetings, you are leading teams, people are counting on you to move. And then you're supposed to go pick up the kiddos and somehow shift into something that's much lower stimulation, depending on the moment. You're supposed to go play with them outside. You're this, you're that. If you do not have, I would say, discipline to really support you in this divided attention, it's so challenging. There's also the overstimulation, right, that comes inherently in motherhood. In particular, if you are a high performer, right? Kids are loud. Kids are sticky. Oh my God, I hate sticky. They want to, especially depending on their age. So mamas of littles, right? Like your kids are physically regulating with you. They need that closeness. They need emotional regulation in order to truly be able to regulate and continue moving forward. On top of that, there is achievement pressure that if you are a high performing woman, you have grown up with. Right? This is not a dynamic. Hey y'all, Dr. B here. I am scooching in here for a quick second because I have a question for you. Do you know which of the 4 powerhouse profiles you are yet? Because let me tell you, there are 2 things that decide how you lead, live, and love. The first is how much you trust your own instincts, and 2 is how much of your true self the world actually gets to see. Where those 2 things meet is your profile. And once you know yours, everything about how you show up at work and at home not only starts to make sense, but it becomes malleable and you can evoke change. The quiz is just 10 questions, takes about 2 minutes. It is free. It is my gift to you. I am so grateful that you are here. I love the community that we have built together. Find the link in the show notes and find your type today. Now let's get back to the show. The pressure to do everything is not something that magically shows up when you are an adult, right? Instead, what happens is you are like bred. That might be like a really intense way to say that, right? But like you are growing up in these dynamics that are teaching you to push for more. And this is such an insidious mindset that a lot of high-performing women don't even realize they have, right? On top of that, we are introducing emotional exhaustion, the nervous system overload of managing all of this. And the other one that I see a ton and that I am currently working on myself is being physically present but emotionally absent because we are not prioritizing our physical needs. Now, this is a lot, right? This is really just like surface level, like what we are navigating and moving through currently. The other end of this is that you also grew up in a home that was priming your nervous system to say that being wired to attend to someone else's needs is home base. It is wired to say that overstimulation and not prioritizing yourself is what is expected of you. And I would say most importantly, you grew up in a home where you were taught that in order to be loved, you needed to be performing and pushing and doing things for other people. And your own physical and emotional needs came at the bottom of the list, right? So then you introduce children who are going to bring all of this like surface level top bullet points no matter what, right? And one, not only are they incredibly perceptive to your nervous system, but they are going to react to every single shift, right? They know when your body is near them, but your mind is somewhere different. They know if you are constantly multitasking, and they also know, for better and for worse, when you are dysregulated. Okay? And this is huge. Again, I want you to keep in mind, children do not stay close to perfect mothers. You don't have to always be regulated. You don't always have to be doing all of the things, right? Children stay close to parents who feel emotionally available, which I want to distill that even farther. You just have to be emotionally honest. We're not looking for perfect. We're not looking for always emotionally available. They need to learn they're not the center of the world. And we're also not looking for a mother who is self-sacrificing. Newsflash. Becoming a martyr is going to set your child up to also be a martyr. We're not going to get this perfect. What we're looking for is emotional availability and emotional honesty about where you are at. So this looks like being emotionally responsive. And here's what I mean by this is, let's say kiddo comes in the door we'll use my kiddo, right? So we will say that like sister or Baba walks in the door and they will tell me something. They will tell me about their day and say I'm wrapping up with a client over here. Maybe I'm on Marco Polo, maybe I'm on a text, maybe I'm whatever. Sister has come to the point, keep in mind she's like 3.5 years old. She has literally come to the point where she will stand and she will wait until I make eye contact with her. Because she knows that she wants my attention, and sometimes she has to wait for that, right? If she comes in and she starts talking and I respond, but I'm not really emotionally there, she will raise her voice. She'll raise her voice, she'll come and grab my hand, and she's basically shaking me and saying, Mom, pay attention to me. I want your attention, right? And this is huge. Like, what a gift. And it's a lot better than it used to be. I will tell you. She used to, when she was like little bitty, like we're talking like 1.5, 2 years old, before we had really learned and mastered like physical boundaries, she used to like slap me, right? Like she'd be babbling or something like that. And if I was not paying attention to her the way that she wanted me to be, she would like wallop me in the face. And I was like, bro, are you kidding me? And Little Miss Therapist me would come online and be like, okay, clearly she needs something. So like, 1, we're not going to hit. You've lost your mind. But 2, okay, you have my attention. Clearly I was not in a space where you actually had my attention. And I want you to zoom this out for a second, right? Because think about the last time you were talking to your husband and he's on his phone, or you share something and clearly you're looking for a back and forth and he just doesn't respond, right? Children are like 1,000,000 times more sensitive to this dynamic because for them, you are their anchor, you are their safety. They need that emotional responsiveness. The next is that emotional availability looks like being regulated enough to stay connected. So again, let's look at the teenager who has made a really poor life decision. Okay. And now teenagers are tricky in many ways because they are also in this space where they have to start making these mistakes. Like I believe the biggest gift we can give to our children as a mother is allowing them to experience their own mistakes. On a much smaller scale, we went camping, sister touched a cactus, right? That was my bad for not watching. Also guarantee she will never touch a cactus again. So let's say you have a teenager who stayed out past curfew and was drinking at a party and got busted, right? I don't know. Your ability to not fly off the handle while still holding very clear boundaries, very clear, like, hey, here's the consequence. But the ability to get curious and to engage in a difficult conversation with this child, with this teenager is everything. Right? Because again, they don't need to see perfection. They have to see you emote. They have to see you have feelings. They have to see you have discussions and like conflict with their father, right? That is part of this. But emotional like dysregulation is going to look like raising your voice, avoiding the conversation, making snide comments, making passive aggressive comments, being incredibly controlling, right? All of that is avoiding the emotion that is under the conflict itself, right? So we also want to see that they and you are still safe during disappointment. And this is huge. This is huge for children and teenagers at any age, but the ability to tolerate their disappointment and for them to be able to tolerate your disappointment is huge. It is so healthy to understand that we will not always get what we want. We will not always get what we want, and we will not always be good at something. Like disappointment to me, I was reading it was a book on like Buddhism or something like that. And it literally said the task of the parent is to teach your child to suffer. And it talked a lot about disappointment, right? If you can master the emotion and your relationship with disappointment, I want you to like zoom out and play this out, guys. Truly, the world becomes your oyster. If you are no longer afraid and you are no longer avoiding disappointment, oh my gosh, like high sales. It becomes so much easier to chase these big, audacious dreams that we are hoping all of our children decide to go after, right? So, teaching that it is not only safe to feel disappointed, but also that they can remain connected to you even when they disappoint you is huge. Okay. Now, the other one is remaining warm rather than chronically being rushed. Now, this one is hard because what I will tell you, the performance coach in me will say, yes, mindfulness is great. If you can wake up and you can say, oh my gosh, I feel my feet under my body and I'm going to put on this shirt and I notice the texture, and like that skill will 100% help you to feel less rushed. It is also not the reality that a lot of women in my community live in. What I find works best to build a lack of some kind of behaviors, to build a system that is stronger than the behavior itself. So if you feel as though you are always being rushed, I want you to literally go time block whatever the transition is that you are rushing through. So pull out your journal here for a second and think about, are the mornings always rushed? Are the afternoons when you're making dinner always rushed? Is it a rush to get into bed at the end of the night? And then I want you to reverse engineer here a little bit. Use the same skills that you use in the workplace, but use them at home, right? So look at, I'm thinking about the morning. This can be a big one at our house. So when I look at this, it makes a really big difference if we pack the backpacks ahead of time. If my husband and I are incredibly clear on who's making breakfast, who's getting the kids ready, we already know what time they're waking up, but like we call it team captain. So who's team captain for that morning? And then we have learned that we need to start walking out the door 20 minutes earlier than we actually do. And if we happen to get in the car on time, well then cool, maybe we'll stop at Starbucks or we'll stop and get donuts on the way to Miss Gwen's, right? But my perspective is that if you are also looking to not feel chronically rushed, because think about how that feels for your kids, right? Think about the manager or the boss who is like, get this done by 4:00. And oh, great, you got that. Here are 10 other things. And I need you to move faster. And like, why aren't you moving faster? Right? It's overwhelming on top of the fact that they have a younger brain. Okay. So another big one that I really want y'all to write down is moving into a space of curiosity. Curiosity reads as emotional availability every time. And here's why. Because you cannot access curiosity without having your prefrontal cortex lit up. And here's what that means. Guys, when you are dysregulated, when you are in a space of raising your voice, feeling like you've lost autonomy over your own behavior, maybe you're pointing your finger or you are saying, why are you being such a brat? Like whatever it is that's happening that you're not proud of, you are in your limbic system, okay? You are in your lower brain. You're in a survival part of your nervous system. And when that is the case, you cannot also have your prefrontal cortex lit up. It's not possible. You are not regulated enough to do so. So I once worked in community mental health, and they got this phrase from, oh gosh, Tina Bryson. Shout out to her, because one time she sent me a lot of free books for a book club. I love her. But Tina Bryson, I think it's her and Dan Siegel, they talk about chasing the why. And they used to like metaphorically beat this into our heads when we worked with kids and families at this setting, at this location, right? Because those kids were like off the chain. They were so dysregulated in so many different ways, not just like big behaviors. Sometimes they were internalizing behaviors. And we were like little baby therapist practicum students. And so we were learning, and they teach you by like dropping you in and being like, go do it. And then you would sit in supervision and you would have to talk through whatever it was that was going on. And what they would bring us back to time and time and time again is chasing the why. Why is this child behaving this way in front of me? Guys, if you can access that curiosity, if you can chase the why, everything changes. Because one, you change your perspective of this child's behavior. Because they're literally not doing this to spite you. It is never personal. It's never about you, right? Think about like that literal ego belief of this behavior is about me personally is very childlike belief. It's like being on a stage and just imagining that like everyone is focused on you, and that's just not the reality. But it is also going to light up that prefrontal cortex, and it's almost like overriding, and it's going to help you regulate. Okay. One of my biggest like bones to pick with the self-help industry is that when there are body-based practitioners who are literally incredible nervous system-based practitioners, and they're like, you just need to like breathe your way through to a better behavior, or to being more regulated, or to whatever, like notice what's happening in your body. And I'm like, that's great. Except the packs that I run in, like sometimes I don't realize they have a body. And so we want to do something strength-based. Strength-based here is chase that why. Chase that why, light up that prefrontal cortex, okay? Your kids are going to feel it. When they do that, they are going to feel like they're not in trouble. Even if like there are and there's disappointment, you are automatically going to help them regulate their own nervous systems in that moment though. Huge game changer. And then here's the big one, is being emotionally available without perfection. I'm going to say that again. I want you to write it down. I want you to give it a star. Being emotionally available without perfection. When I got this feedback from my friend, and she came and snatched my soul in her freaking like strawberry sunglasses that she was wearing, nonchalantly walking down the street like she didn't just absolutely come for my whole life. After I regulated, first I popped off. Patricia came out. I took a few moments and was like, oh my God. And I went and talked to my husband, and he was like, what's the plan? We came up with a plan. Yesterday I spent time talking with my kiddos, and I didn't it wasn't like a big thing because they're young. They don't need to hear everything. And it wasn't, oh my gosh, mommy has not been available to you, and I haven't been doing my best, and I haven't right? The other part of this that I didn't share that feels really vulnerable to share with you is that my daughter had also, so we have Princess Papaya, and we tell stories in the evenings, and we co-create them. It's so much fun. It's literally like playing D&D, because I tell the story, but she inserts herself in the story, and she makes some of the decisions as we go along. And it's this really cool thing and a beautiful connection practice, but also a way for us to repair if we ever need that. Well, in her story, one of the themes that has started to show up is that the friends are too busy to come and help her. Okay. Now, keep in mind, children process by play. They don't process by saying, now, unless I guess you're my kid, sometimes they will come up and be like, you hurt my feelings and I don't accept. And I'm like, well, you're 3 years old, so dear God. But that was one of the themes that had started to show up. And I was like, geez. Now, I also very firmly believe we're not going to get it all right. There's so much, I feel just so much grace for myself and so much gratitude that I have an ego that's sturdy enough to be able to tolerate that kind of feedback. So when I had a conversation with them, my question was kind of do you ever notice that mommy works a lot? And sister was like, yeah, you work. And I asked her, I said, do you have any feelings about that? And to which she promptly started talking about playing in the sand and da 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 da. And it wasn't necessarily the biggest emotional conversation. Again, this child is 3.5 years old, right? She's also very intelligent. And what felt important to me was I was modeling goals and doing better and loving myself in the process. And because, the other end of what I told her was, mommy's noticed that too. And so I've decided that's one of the goals I'm going to work on. Now, she doesn't know what a goal is. She was watching me talk through something that once I noticed it, I didn't necessarily like that. And so I'm going to put more boundaries in place, and I'm going to work on this because, that's what we do at Team McGeehan. We can do hard things. And to which she held my hand and said, we can do hard things. And I was like, you right, girl. And so on we moved, right? But my point in sharing that was there was a lot of emotional availability to not be perfect, which is such a trap for high performers. Such a trap if you are someone who has not only grown up in an environment that told you you must be perfect, otherwise you are not worthy of love or connection, but also you have built an ego structure that is dependent on you being this high performer and doing all of the things and doing them well. Even if it's doing them all well in the healing process, right? I see that too. Being regulated enough to be able to say, I messed up. And I'd like to try again. we call them redos at our house, right? Do you need a redo? Currently they're like qualified, so I want a sad redo. I want an angry redo. The point is that children are going to open up to the people that they believe can hold in the same way that you open up to people who feel emotionally safe and available to you. So that's all I've got for y'all today. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you took some notes. I also hope that you come back to this episode whenever you need a reminder that literally the number one thing you can do to encourage your child to want to have a relationship with you, honestly, at its core, is simply to be more emotionally available, first and foremost, to yourself and then to them, which is it's not always gentle parenting. It's not always getting it right. It's having the courage and regulation to come back and say, hey, I messed that up and I want to try again. And you still might mess it up again, but just having the courage to not be perfect is huge. All right, that's all I got for y'all. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you on the next episode. Alrighty, friend, that is all for today's episode of the Aligned Powerhouse podcast. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if this episode resonated, I want you to share it with another powerhouse woman in your life who is ready to lead and love from a place of self-trust. And don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a quick rating or review. It really does help more women find this work. New episodes drop every week. Until then, lead with self-trust and let yourself be seen.